So, your name is Beobran. And where have you come from?
Katwara.
The South. We don't place much trust in men from the South.
Plane took his family.
Tell me, Beobran of the South, what is in your heart?
Hello, Matthew. Delighted to be chatting with you. Best-selling author of the Chronicles of Bernicia. Is that how you pronounce it?
Bernicia Chronicles. Yeah,
Bernicia
Bernicia Chronicles. I think everyone asks how it's pronounced, and I always say Bernicia, but to be honest, I don't really know because it's based on an old English word, so who knows?
Oh, okay.
But, some people, I'm sure someone would tell you it's pronounced differently, but I pronounce it Bernicia.
Okay, that sounds
Okay,
good.
Matthew. Yeah, anyway, good to make your acquaintance and finally catch up with you. Terry's told me bits and pieces about you, and I thought it was the Bernicia Chronicles anyway before I listened to you, what you just said there. So we're on the same wavelength. So
Good.
You're originally from Northumberland, now living in Wiltshire. Is that anywhere near Swindon, or are you in a quieter area?
I'm in a
with
quieter
wife and
area.
kids?
Yeah, I'm in a bit of a quieter area down near Trowbridge.
I know
which is the
Trowbridge,
county town of Wiltshire. So
yeah.
It's claims to fame. But I'm not actually from Northumbria. Or Northumberland. It's a bit of a red herring. On the books, the publishers decided to put. Well, they've written it in such a way that it's not a lie, but they've sort of said, his childhood in Northumberland, and it's true. We did live in Northumberland for a few years as a child. When I was a child, my parents went up there to work, and obviously I went up with them. So I did spend a few years as a child in Northumberland. But I'm from Sussex originally.
Oh,
right. And I've gone all over the place. So I started off in West Sussex, then Northumberland, then back down to Sussex, then Spain for over 10 years, and now Wiltshire.
I saw something about Spain. I was reading it somewhere. It's probably on this piece of paper I've got in front of me. Oh, you worked in Spain as a teacher, didn't you? English teacher.
Yeah, so I went to school first in Spain. So my parents went out there to work, and I went to school for a few years, and then met my wife there, and so lived there for another sort of 10 years or so, and taught English as a second language, and did some translation work and stuff as well.
Excellent.
Matthew, reading it on the About You section on your excellent website, Harffy.com, you mentioned a career in IT. Well, you've just mentioned then as well the role as an English teacher. What were you doing in IT? Were you doing application support? Were you programming?
Well, when I was in Spain, and towards the end of the 90s, I decided I didn't have a degree. So I'd sort of gone out there because I'd met my wife when I was 18, decided not to go to university. I thought I can't not go back to Spain. So because I'd come back to the UK to do my A-levels. Basically, I didn't really want to study anymore. So it got to the late 90s, and I thought I'm not really going to make enough money teaching English as a second language to ever be able to buy a house or to basically do anything. And at this point, I'd got married, and I just thought, maybe I need to do something else. And so I decided to study. And originally, I was working in the Natural History Museum in Madrid some of the time, and there's a research department there, and I was working with people, teaching them English, and then also doing sort of translations and proofreading and stuff for their research papers. And so I thought I'll do an Open University degree, and I'll do a foundation course in sciences, and then I'll do a degree in geology. This is my idea because I was working in the geology department principally. So I did this foundation course in sciences, bearing in mind my A-levels had been English literature, which I failed, theatre studies, which I got a really scraped pass, and art. So I'd done art, theatre studies, and English. And then I thought I'll go and study geology. So I did this foundation course, which I managed to pass. And then, but my wife sort of said to me, "Do you really want to go into science, doing a science degree? Because you're always on the computer, you're always doing stuff with computers. Why don't you do something about computers?" And so, my wife obviously is very wise, and she knows me better than I know myself.
IT work
and
pays
so,
more.
yeah. So, and she said, "Yeah, it definitely pays more." So, she said, "Why don't you sort of pivot away from the sciences and do computer science?" So I did that. So I ended up getting a degree in IT and computing, and then we're into the very early noughties, and I'm halfway through the degree because it takes a few years when you're working and to do this Open University degree. And I thought, okay, I want a job, and I looked around, and I didn't even know that the job that I ended up doing existed. But I started applying for jobs as a developer in the UK. We wanted to move back to the UK, and my family is here, and we wanted to move closer to my family. And then I discovered basically I thought there's no way I can actually program anything or code anything. Although I'm sort of studying this, I'm not really good enough to do that. And I discovered this job called technical writer or technical author, which I had no idea what it even meant at the time. But I thought, I sort of looked into it a bit, and this is, the internet existed, but not like it does now. So, you do a bit of research. And I got an interview with a company in Bath. And they flew me over for the interview because this is before Zoom interviews and stuff. So they said, we'll pay for you to fly over. Did a telephone interview first, but with the experience I had of doing translations and English teaching and stuff, and I had a few. The lucky thing that got me into the job was the fact that some of the guys that I worked with in the Natural History Museum had been kind enough to include me as co-author on some of their papers, because they knew I was studying for this degree. And so they said, well, now you're helping us with the English and you're doing all this, we'll put you on as co-author because that will really help you if you go into academia. And I thought, well, brilliant. So I've got things published in Nature magazine and stuff like that, which loads of other people, I think, in the academia world were quite pissed off about, because they were like, why are you giving this 20-something-year-old bloke who knows nothing, why are you putting him as co-author of your paper and I'm not getting published? So I think that's what, because they said for this interview, I know it's a long answer to a short question, but basically they said, can you prove that you can write? And so I had these published articles that I could say, well, actually, yes, I'm published in Nature magazine and all different magazines. Yeah. So they could go and look and see, and they go, okay, that's technical stuff. You can write. You're doing a degree in computing. So Bob's your uncle moved over a month later and started a job in Bath in this IT company, and we writing software for big telecoms companies, and I was writing the manuals for the developers and people, and that sort of progressed. We worked there for 18 years, and in the end I became a senior technical writer, and then in the end I was managing a team in the UK, in Israel, in Spain, not in Spain, in India, in London. So I had a team all over the place, and then they started paring the teams down increasingly until eventually it was, we're making you redundant and we're making everybody in your team in the UK redundant. So just, can you shut the door on the way out? And I said, yeah, okay. And I've been writing full time ever since.
So is this where the ecological impact of mining and the marble pipe organ construction comes in?
yeah, that's where those things come in. So I sort of vaguely know something about them, but don't really. I would not pretend to be an expert in any of those things.
Oh, I was going to be really impressed then. Anyway,
that sounds great.
Yeah, framboidal pyrites as well. Yeah, I remember all these amazing things.
Just going off on a tangent there. That looks like a lovely, nice beer you've got there, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's an IPA, an American IPA, which is my sort of favorite type of beer, which is that sort of modern hoppy ale.
Right.
But, yeah.
I was just going to go off on a tangent and ask you about your microphone. That looks like a studio mic from a radio there. What's all that about? Do you do some home studio or some home?
So so this is from the days of when I was singing in a rock band, and it's not a fantastic mic. It's quite a cheap one. It's a Behringer. They do some great quality stuff, but it's sort of low end, quite cheap. But I had it. I've had it sitting around for years and years and years. I was in a rock band. Well, when I was right from teenager, all the way through, I've been in different bands. But in the sort of the 20 years that I was working in this company, I'd been in a couple of bands. Ended up forming a band called Rock Dog. With a guy that I worked with, and then we brought other people on board, and we went for about 7 or 8 years, and it was great fun. And one of the things I've done was some, home recording as well. And so I got it then, and I've had it hanging around for years. And a couple of years ago, my wife said, you need to get rid of all this music stuff which you haven't used for years. So I had like a monitor and all the different things. And so I thought, yeah, okay, I'll get rid of all the stuff, but I don't want to get rid of the microphones because they're small and they're useful. And then I thought, well, I should just get an adapter so I can plug into the laptop, and actually use it for doing
USB.
videos and So I got a USB. I asked for one for Christmas. It was about 30 quid. Another bearing a little adapter thing, and you can just plug in your XLR and then to USB. And I've been using it for this and for the podcast and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, they're absolutely ideal for talking, aren't they? They're perfect. Maybe not as, like you say, for singing in a band with the Rock Dog band you were in. Yeah, that was my next question, actually. I was going to ask you about the microphone and then say, ask about the band as well. But you've done all that in a one. So over to you, Terry.
Yeah.
Those questions.
Yeah, the main focus, we're going to focus on the Bernicia Chronicles. There's 8 out so far. Is it 9 in total?
9, isn't it?
There's 9 out at the moment. So the 9th one came
December
out
last year.
Just before Christmas. Yeah. So the 9th one's Forest of Foes. So there's 9 of those. There are more planned. I've got at least another one I will write because it's already contracted for. So there will be at least 10. But the story that I envisage won't finish at 10. It's probably, at the minimum, I'd say it's probably going to be 12 or 13. And then it depends on how things go, whether I stretch it out and write some more stories around the main character, Bearbrand, or not. But there's definitely a couple of big sort of historical events that I want to include towards the end of the saga, I guess you'd call it by this point. Okay.
Can you tell us the genre, the period it's set?
Yeah, so it's historical fiction set in 633. The very first book is The Serpent Sword. AD. And it starts in 633 AD. So that's in Britain after the Romans, a couple of hundred years after the Romans have left, and 150, 200 years before the Vikings have come along. So it's a bit of an age which is usually referred to as the Dark Ages, or has over history been called that. Academics hate the term, and they'll call it the early medieval period is the sort of correct term. That looks like you're drinking a pina colada there, Steve.
I've got water.
It's orange in it. Looks like a flower vase, doesn't it? Actually, or something like that. Yeah. Orange and sparkly water.
But you look like you need a little umbrella in the top of it.
A Del Boy one, yeah.
So anyway, so yes, it's set in 7th century. It's based on real history. So in each book, it covers real historic events that we know about. We don't know a huge amount of detail about them, but there's things written in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, and the Venerable Bede, who wrote a history of the English church and people a few decades later. He wrote quite extensively about that period because he could interview people that had been around or knew people that were around. And he was in Northumberland as well. So Northumbria, at that period, that point in time, for 150, 200 years, became the most powerful kingdom in Britain, which I didn't know about. And when I started writing was because I saw a documentary on TV which talked about Bamborough Castle being the centre of this kingdom. I'd been there, so I recognised the place, and I loved the area, but I didn't know this history where the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had formed basically there's several Anglo-Saxon kingdoms across Britain, all vying for power, and how the Northumbrian kingdom was for a long time the most powerful of those, and definitely one of the most powerful for even longer, fighting for power. So I created this character. So it's a fictional character, Bearbrand, who turns up there, comes from the south of England. And I realized later, quite autobiographically, as I had gone as a child from Sussex to Northumberland, and I didn't think about this until years after finishing it. I thought, oh my goodness, it's me, isn't it? This is me going up, but instead of being bullied at school for having a posh voice, according to all the people up in Northumberland, in Berwick, this is me going up and being super tough, writing a tough character and go up and beat up all the bullies, so nobody messes with him, well, they do, but then he kills them. So I thought this is sort of righting those wrongs that I perceived to have been done to me as a child. But that was some sort of Freudian thing that I wasn't aware of until years later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's it. And so Bearbrand, he starts off as a young man. He gets his story interweaves with the story of the real kings and the bishops and the people of the time. And different kings come and go, and there's battles, and he always ends up being, at the most exciting place, wherever he could, wherever there's action, he's there, and somehow he's involved,
Yeah. Did the impact or the popularity of Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin? I know Game of Thrones, in a way, it's a fantasy. It's a place that doesn't exist. They've got dragons. Did the popularity, did that have an impact, do you think, on the sales or the promotion of your work?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think my stuff came out, well, probably there was definitely a crossover when my books were out and the Game of Thrones was out. I don't know. I think it's probably more people that are really into the Last Kingdom. In fact, the story of my books, Bernard Cornwell's books, The Last Kingdom, of they're set, they in the time of the Vikings, so it's a couple of hundred years later. And the first book, it starts off in Bamborough, in Bebbanburg. The main character is a young man who becomes a warrior. So there's very many similarities. In fact, I started writing the first one, The Serpent Sword, back in 2001, before The Last Kingdom came out. And when The Last Kingdom came out, I was so pissed off because it was so similar. And I knew everybody would think that I'd copied him. I basically threw it away, and I didn't throw it away, but I just stuck it on a hard drive and didn't touch it for years. That's when I went off and formed a band, and I did all the band stuff. And it was years later, back like in 2012, 2013 or something. And I then decided that was crazy, that I should pick it up and carry on. But I knew inevitably people were going to always have that sort of comparison. But in the end, it's been a favorable comparison. Many people say, I don't like it as much, but that's up to them. Other people say they like it more than Bernard Cornwell stuff. But I'm a huge fan of his books, and his fans have been really appreciative and really supportive of me as well. So that's been great. I mean, I've been invited along to talk at the Bernard Cornwell fan club in York. They did a get together thing. They invited me and some other writers to go along and talk. So they feel very welcoming, and it's been a really great. It's been great for me, because I think that's helped me in my sales. And in fact, on my podcast, I managed to me and Stephen A. Mackay, another writer, and I have a podcast, and called Rock Paper Swords. I'll give it a plug.
So it's
called Rock Paper Swords. Thank you. And we've had Bernard Cornwell on last year, and he's great. So it's great to have a chat with him and actually talk for an hour about writing and books and things. So
I'm jealous.
Our paths have crossed many times, over the years, but it's always via email and different things. And he's maybe talking at an event but we've never met. I've never met face to face, but still we've now had a conversation on Zoom. So
I'd love to chat with him.
Yeah, that is excellent, isn't it? I mean, we were going to ask about that. That was one of the next questions. That's brilliant. You've answered that. But just to clarify, so it's your co-author or with your podcast, is it Stephen A. Mackay? Yeah, because I've got written down here Sten for some reason.
Stephen A. Mackay. Yeah, and he writes.
I'm blaming Terry. It must be
it's me. It's a typo. Yeah, it is. I'm looking at it myself.
He writes historical fiction too. He's got a series of books called Wolfhead about Robin Hood, and then he's got a new series. A series he's working on at the moment is about it's called the Warrior Druid of Britain or something, I think it's called. But it's about the first book, and it's called The Druid, and it's a series it's set in, I think it's about 5th century, so he's a little bit before mine. So he's got some books that are set a little bit later than mine and a little bit earlier than mine. But yeah, similar genre again, action and adventure, and so the podcast, we both like rock music, we both like historical fiction and action and adventure. So those are the things we cover: action, adventure, historical fiction, rock music. Rock, paper, swords.
Brilliant.
Just going back to the Bernicia Chronicles then. I know this might seem an obvious question, but you put a map in each book, don't you? Is that just to help the reader with a description or, so they can put everything into order where it all is? Is that the idea? Yeah.
Yeah, that is the idea. And I know some people don't really care for maps that much at all. I, as a kid, and even now, I still play Dungeons and Dragons, and I love the maps in like books, in fantasy books. So the maps in like things like the Lord of the Rings, and which the style of the maps in my book, the cartographer that does them, are very much based on the style of Tolkien in the Lord of the Rings. They look very similar if you sort of compare them to the Tolkien maps, and so I think it's just for those people that love maps. Have a nice map. I wanted maps in the first one, and obviously the publisher liked them as well, and now it becomes quite a big job. So I'm writing another series at the moment as well. I've just written, literally yesterday, I finished editing my own edits before sending off to the editor, the third book in A Time for Swords series, which is set a little bit later. It's set the late 8th century. So just at the beginning of the Viking Age. And in the third one, they travel down to Islamic Spain. And so part of that process at the end is my editor contacts me and says, can you tell us, can you send us a map of like mark down the places where they're going and where the route is, so that then he can then give that to the cartographer. The cartographer does his thing and puts it together, makes it look amazing, sends it back to me, and then I go, no, hang on a minute, that you need a forest here, because I know in the story they're forests, and historically there were forests or whatever. There needs to be a road here, or you need to not bother with this bit here, or you need to change this, and we sort of go through an iterative process. But in the end, they look great.
Okay. Tell us about. I've seen a trailer that you've had made for the Serpent Sword TV project. Tell us about that. The trailer looks brilliant, and if you wouldn't mind, can I get your permission to add it to this on the edit?
Absolutely, yes. You can edit it. You can stick it on. You can put it on to this. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah,
excellent.
More people that see it, the better.
Yeah.
The idea behind doing it was really to get some visibility of the project and see if somebody somewhere would say, "Oh, great, you've had thousands of views." And
he's looking for honor. He's looking for a king, and all he finds is death.
We live in an age of betrayal. Men die by the sword, or by fire,
Take it.
or by words whispered in the dark. Tell me, Bearbrand of the South, what is in your heart?
It has kind of stalled now, the whole thing. But this is from a couple of years ago. We finished. Well, I'll go back in time. So back in 2019, I got contacted. Probably early 2019, I got contacted by a keen amateur historian and reader of my books, and he asked. It might have even been 2018, but he asked. He contacted me on Facebook and said, have you sold the rights to the TV or film rights for the Serpent Sword? And I said, no, not that I'm aware of. And he said, oh, would you like to, make a historically accurate version, film or TV series of The Serpent's Sword and the books? And I was like, well, yeah, of course I would. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, well, I know some people in the industry. I'll go away and have a look. And he's disappeared. And I just thought, yeah, whatever. I mean, I thought it was just a nutter. But so I sort of said, yeah, okay, whatever. So he went off, and anyway, he came back a few months later, and the short version of this is that his brother-in-law and this guy's sister both worked in the film industry, and they knew some people in a small production company who might be interested in working on it. So I met with them, and we got together, and we hired a script writer, a guy called Greg Stewart.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, Gregory Stewart, and he's a novelist as well. And so he came on and wrote the screenplay for a pilot episode, and the second episode, and we did a Bible for the whole thing. So you do a TV Bible, which breaks down all the characters and everything. Yeah. So we did all of this stuff, and we decided that maybe the best way of getting in front of executives in the film industry, or when we do manage to get in front of film executives and TV producers and people, that it would be great to have something to show rather than just this Bible and stuff. And maybe it was a completely ridiculous idea, but we all went off and thought this was a great idea. So we got our heads together. We planned it all out. Greg wrote a script for a trailer. Yeah. So rather than filming, the whole 9-episode series, he wrote a script that would sort of showcase different bits and characters from the book. We then auditioned loads of actors. We got reenactors involved. We got there's a place called the House of Wessex near Oxford, which is a reconstruction of a 7th century hall. And a guy called Matt Bunker is working on that. And I contacted him, and I've spoken to him over the years about different things about the period. He's a great expert of the 7th century. And he gave us permission to film there. And the Silver Project, which was the charity that was running that. So we got pulled in all these favors, and we got it all together. We got some professional music scored for it. Everything was done for no money at all. We filmed it over 7 days, and it's amazing. We got professional sound design on it. The person who did the sound design is actually now a team. She works for a company called Bang in Cardiff, and they've won a BAFTA for their sound for films and stuff. So we've got really good quality people working on this. And then the pandemic hit. I mean, literally, I think it was the last day of filming was the weekend before the pandemic. It was already everybody was sort of getting a bit twitchy about everything. We weren't sure what was going on, so I didn't go on set. We had a few people filming, but everyone was getting really nervous about it, like, do we wear masks, don't we wear masks? It was just before lockdown, and so they had it the minimum number of people. They were all wearing masks on set and everything, apart from when they were actually filming. And then it was all over to edits and getting all this stuff done. And I think if we'd had it already, then the trailer and everything, like literally then at the beginning of mid-March, April 2020, I think we might have managed to get it commissioned, because I think there was such a desire for television content at the time. Everybody was buying everything. But it took us a few months to go from having all the raw footage and everything to get the music done and get it all edited together and the special effects added and all the sound design. So it was I think it was June or July by the time we got it out. And then we still managed to speak to a lot of people. We were speaking to production companies in the States and in the UK. We met with people from Netflix and the people that make the Last Kingdom TV series. We spoke to them. And, we spoke to lots of interesting people and lots of interesting actors. We were speaking to actors who were working on the Lord of the Rings, the new one. They were locked down in Wellington or wherever it was in New Zealand, and we were speaking to them on Zoom, and because they were just desperate to talk to people. So we're talking to all these amazing people. But then as the world started opening up, it just became increasingly difficult to get anywhere with it. And really, I mean, the whole film industry and TV industry is just a whole other thing. I mean, publishing itself is difficult. It's difficult to get published, but to get it to actually get to speak to the right people and get things
yeah.
in front of the right people in the TV industry is just incredible. So we had an agent for a while. He messed us about. Eventually, we did see a couple of people, but yeah, it's just. And now everything's kind of just gone off the boil. And as my wife kept on pointing out to me, said, it's great if the TV thing happens, but remember, the books is what is your day job. So just keep plugging away at the books and keep doing the bread and butter thing, and let's see what happens. But yes, by all means, the website is theserpentsword.com, and you can go on. Then there's a link from MatthewHarffy.com as well.
Yeah,
we when we did put it out, we got over 100,000 views on the Facebook video for it in like the first 2 weeks. And so there was a lot of buzz about it, and so we were pitching to people saying, we've had 100,000 views of this, and everyone who saw it, said it was great, and it looks brilliant for the fact that we did it for nothing. Basically, we did it for no money.
It looks totally professional. It's quality. It doesn't look as though a couple of amateur mates have got together with the neighbor next door who's got a camera.
No, exactly, and I think that's the thing is that we couldn't. It was a bit of a difficult thing because the quality is so good, and we would go and say to people, we filmed this on £1,000 budget because we got a kind donation from someone for £1,000. So basically, that was our budget. So we said we did the whole thing for £1,000, and then you could see the film producers, their eyes light up, and they go, "Oh, well, if you did 3 minutes for £1,000, that means you could do a whole season, a whole series for like £1 million or whatever." They'd work it out, the numbers, and they'd say, "So that's the whole thing you could do for a few 100,000." And we were like, "Yeah, but we couldn't because we weren't paying anybody, and we were doing it all." But you could see they thinking, "Oh, we could do this really cheap," and then it's like, "Yeah, but that's not the idea. We don't want to do the actual proper thing cheap. We're just showing what we could do with very little money, but." Let's give us some money and we'll do a better job. But
that must have been really, really frustrating to not get an end product and to follow it through. And especially after speaking to people on Netflix and
Yeah, it is a bit frustrating. I mean, I just think
it still might happen though, Matthew.
It still might happen. That's the thing. I just look at it as all the way through. I was looking at it as I was meeting incredibly talented people that were interested and excited and enthusiastic. So from the production people, the people making the music, the film, the actors, everybody involved in it was incredibly enthusiastic and interesting and nice people and talented. So that was all great. And I was thinking, well, you never know where it's gonna go in the future. Those people may be in a position in the future to help it out, or somebody will see it. And I always looked at it. I thought the worst case scenario, I end up with like the best book trailer out there. So that was it. So, I mean, we're at this stage, I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know.
True, fingers crossed.
Going back again to when you started writing, you obviously connected with a publisher, which is Head of Zeus, or is it Aries Books?
So Aries now, is an imprint of Head of Zeus, who are now part of Bloomsbury. So it's sort of like a big, there's lots of tentacles. Yeah.
So did you find that a struggle, or did you initially think about going down the self-publishing route, or how did it feel for you? We've had lots of experience with different authors telling us different things, so just interested to find out your thoughts.
So actually, I mean, I self-published to start with. So what happened was I decided, I think it was 2013, I heard about E.L. James and the 50 Shades of Grey, and that she'd self-published and made so much money. And I didn't know anything. I mean, I have to be honestly say I haven't read the books, but she was making a lot of money self-publishing. And so I thought, well, in worst case scenario, I can self-publish. So I finished the first book, The Serpent's Sword, and then I thought, well, I'll try to go the normal traditional route. And bearing in mind, this is like 2013, 2014 by this point. So I thought I'll go the traditional route. And I found an agent quite quickly, relatively quickly, in a couple of months. And then he said, okay, I'm going to take this out and try to sell it to publishers. And I thought, okay, this is great. He was the agent for other writers who are successful. I thought, so what did I know? I thought, you get an agent, they sell your book. The next thing is you're living in the Bahamas, you got your yacht, and it's all fantastic. So what happened was, over the next, I don't know how many months, like 7 or 8 months, every few weeks, I'd get an email from him saying, you've been turned down by Hodder, you've been turned down by Simon & Schuster, you've been turned down by, whatever, everybody. And so at the end of this process, you know, and each time there's an email which says, "Oh, we really like the book, you know, whatever, we don't think it's right for our list," and so you just kind of, you don't really know what's wrong. It's just, you know, we're not going to publish it. So you keep going. I was writing the sequel, which is called The Cross and the Curse. So I'd written the sequel, pretty much finishing the sequel by the time I got all the rejections through. At which point I said to my agent, "Well, can you try and flog the sequel?" And he was like, "Well, nobody's going to buy it, but whatever, I'll contact people and see." So he did. I don't think he was really that interested. But anyway, nothing came of it. And then he said, "Well, you know, that's it then. So throw those away and start doing something else." And I was like, "No way."
Yeah.
So I said, "No way. I'm working technical writing, so I knew how to put things together and, you know, how to edit stuff and do the PDFs and all the stuff you need to do."
Yeah.
So I did the cover. So I did the whole lot myself, and I self-published. And that's actually when I met Matt Bunker, who I mentioned earlier, because he's got all the gear, authentic war gear.
Oh.
So in the first covers, I actually got him to take a photo of some of his war gear. In the second book, I did a photo shoot with a friend of mine taking the photos, but of Matt Bunker in all the gear, so the helmet, the shield, and the armor and everything. And I did the covers and I put them out there, and I sold quite well. And then after I'd sold quite well and had a few hundred reviews, that's when my agent then came to me and said, "Oh, there's a new imprint starting with Head of Zoos. They're actually interested, so why don't you see?" And so then I transitioned over to the traditional publishing model. And anticipating the next question, the main reason that I did that was because I thought it would improve distribution, so I'd be able to get into shops and get into libraries and get things like translation deals and audio books sorted out. And obviously not just to mention the fact that I'd get things like the covers designed for me and, you know, the editing and everything. But the model that I moved into was very much like a partnership model. It wasn't a huge advance, and then, you know, you get paid lots of money by the publishers up front. It was basically going in as a partner, so they do all of that work of distribution and editing, but then it's very much me earning a percentage off of sales. So it's different from the traditional model, which would be an advance against royalties.
Yeah, finally from me then, what advice would you give to an aspiring writer, somebody who's just coming into it for the first time? What would you say to them? Best thing to do if you're writing a book?
So two things. I think finish the book. I think the biggest mistake that aspiring writers make is that they don't finish. They just keep going back and tinkering and trying to improve the first chapter or the second or third chapter. It's very easy to start a novel. It's very difficult to finish a novel. So just keep writing, plug away. Once you've finished the novel, you can actually try to make the whole thing better, and you've got a chance of publishing it. Nobody's going to publish an unfinished novel. So that would be my main thing. And the second thing I'd say, don't wait until the day of publishing or self-publishing to start trying to build up a buzz on social media. The day that you start writing is the day that you start building your social media platform.
Yeah, good point.
So you've got, you know, it's going to take you a couple of years before you get published. By that point, when I published my first book, I already had several thousand followers on Twitter because I'd been trying to actively build that platform. So at least, you know, a few thousand people are going to see the name of your book when it comes out, rather than nobody at all.
That's brilliant advice.
Makes sense, really. Yeah,
it's superb. But Matthew, it's time's actually flown by. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I could happily chat to you all day and night if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, it's been really interesting.
It has, really, yeah. But for now, Matthew, we say thank you very much, and let's keep in touch.
Well, thanks Terry, thanks Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. Brilliant. Thanks.
Cheers, mate.